What's going on, everyone, and welcome to the Vermintide 2 weapons tier list for the newest character in the game, Grail Knight. Starting off in D tier, the one-handed sword. I'm sorry if you're a fan of this weapon, but I've always disliked it. I think, let's start with the good, right? The motions are fairly simple. It's easy to use, it's easy to predict. The push attack's not too bad. It's actually fairly good for unarmored hordes and unarmored enemies. The only problem is when you run into like a Storm Vermin or a Chaos Warrior, you can't really do much with this thing. The only attack that can really do any kind of damage from the light attack perspective is the third one, which is that downward headshot motion. But even then, it's not that much damage even if you hit the headshot, so you're kind of forced to use charge attacks all the time with this weapon, which I think is kind of lame. And even then, the damage is really not that great. It's very low damage versus armor, and he's got so many better weapons that you could use. There's really not much point to using this one. Bumping up to C tier, it is the Greatsword. Now this is, by definition, a horde clearing weapon. Couple diagonal slashes here and there. You're going to make lots of temp health from killing things. You're going to take out that horde. You know, this is a viable weapon, definitely. Push attacks would be able to deal with elites, Chaos Raiders, Chaos Warriors, Storm Vermin, Armored Boys, things of that nature. The Greatsword can handle it. It might take you a couple times to do it. It might not be as quick as like, something else, but this is a solid weapon. It's average, I'd say. You can go for it, use it, whatever. Also in C tier, I've got the Mace and Shield. Now, after the beta, the bashes, the shield bashes, which allow you to kind of take that shield back and just punch it right in those rat faces, knock them back, gain some temp health. That comes first in your sequence of heavy attacks now, which I really love. I think that's a great change. Something I've mentioned before on Kruger's shield weapons is that they used to come second, which I thought was dumb, but now they come first. A lot easier, in my opinion, for making temp health. A lot simpler to use. I like it. The push attack on this one also chains into his third light attack, which received a armor-piercing damage profile. So it's actually something that's fairly decent at dealing with elites if you want to do that push attack, light attack chain sequence all the time. It'll work, definitely. Does this weapon overall do that much damage? No, but I mean, you'll definitely be able to generate temp health, deal with hordes, and stay alive with this weapon. It's a usable weapon for sure. But I've got it in C tier. Nothing to really write home about, I don't think. Now, bumping up to B tier, I have the Mace and Sword. This is a DLC weapon. If you're a new player, this might be a fairly easy one to start using because it's simple. You have the push attack, which is that X attack, which is really good. It's got a very high cleave on that weapon, which makes it beautiful for absolutely just blending up unarmored hordes and just kind of dealing with all that trash and those garbage minions and killing them. Very good. And then for elites, you pretty much have to use the charge attacks, which is just literally like coming down from the right and then coming down from the left over and over again. It's easy to get to use, get to know, get to practice. Simple. It's a simple weapon. I think it's maybe a little bit better than average. I don't know. It's okay. Grail Knight, I think, has better choices, but I mean, you can definitely use this one if you want. It's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Also in the B tier, got the Sword and Shield. Now, I think this one is actually kind of fun to use. Like I mentioned with the Mace and Shield, the bash does come first in the sequence of attacks, which is nice. I really like that this weapon is fast. It's got very good speed with your attacks, which is nice. And even though the sword kind of might have some trouble against armor and stuff, there's some motions that let you get headshots, which is really nice. You can, of course, bash and then heavy attack, which is also, which is fun. And then you can also do a push attack, which is kind of, you push and then stab outwards, hopefully trying to get a headshot, and then followed by a heavy attack, which is just another stab. And if you get the headshot and a crit with that attack, you can actually do some fairly decent damage. So you can kind of push things around and work on your headshot game. This is a decent weapon to practice headshots and kind of, like getting to learn the game, getting to learn enemy motions and learning how to kind of time like headshots and stuff. This is a fairly decent weapon to practice on. Fun to use, I think. I've got it in B tier. Also in B tier, the Bretonnian Sword and Shield. Now, let me just start off by saying I hate the attacks on this weapon. I think they're slow, clunky, awkward, wet. Why is it in B tier? I'll tell you why. Strictly for its defensive purposes, I tell you. You can push with this weapon and then follow that up with a light attack, and Marcus will kind of take that shield after the push and bash it, much like the Sword and Shield, much like the Mace and Shield's first bash. So you can kind of do like a double staggering, double bash thing going on, which is really great for generating temp health. And I think fits Grail Knight really well, because he's, melee only class. He's got those 2 weapon slots, so you can take, one slot for your damage or whatever, and then the second slot just take the Bretonnian Sword and Shield. And if you've got, the staggering THP talent, just start doing those double bashes, man. Make a bunch of temp health if you need it. Don't even attack with the weapon. Just bash it up, make some temp health. I think for that reason alone, it deserves to be in B tier. Bumping up to A tier, it is the Great Hammer. Now, I'm a fan of the Great Hammer. It's great for hordes. It's got really good crowd control. It's got armor piercing, so the light attacks can handle elites, Chaos Warriors, Storm Vermin, things of that nature very well. Some people might find it just a tad bit slow on its charge attacks, and I guess its light attacks too, just a little bit. But if you think about it, it's a big, heavy weapon, so it makes sense that it might be just a little bit slow. But I still think it's a really good weapon. The Great Hammer is quite fun to use, quite effective. You can stagger most things with it, which is nice. You can make temp health. You can kind of stay alive. You can kind of create a little wall of separation between you and the rats, which is cool. Also up in A tier, the Mace. Now, this has been my favorite weapon since the beta has really started or gone live, I guess. Its push attack, its first light attack, and its second light attack all got linesman modifiers, which just mean that they have cleave now, so they can hit multiple enemies with those attacks, which is really nice. Its third light attack is an uppercut motion that got a bonus 10% crit chance. So this weapon, I think if you're messing around with the light attacks, you push attack, light 1, light 2, even light 3 if you want, you're going to be able to hold your own. You're going to be able to deal with everything, because those charge attacks also are going to come down and murder some elites, which is awesome. I think that's great. The Mace is one of the biggest improvements since the beta. I think it's hella fun. If you haven't tried it out yet, give it a try. That takes us to S tier, where we have 2 weapons. The first one, the other weapon that is unique to Grail Knight only, well, not Grail Knight only, but unique to Grail Knight in the fact that it was a DLC when he came out, the Bretonnian Longsword. So the first light attack on the Bretonnian Longsword is really good for hordes. It's kind of an uppercut, slight uppercut, side swipe. I actually know a guy that runs a Bretonnian Longsword in the first melee slot and the second melee slot, and switches between them simply and only using the first light attack, which is, I find that to be hilarious. He's really good at it. I guess if you practice enough, you can do that. It's not how I use the weapon at all, but I just felt the need to mention that because that was funny to me. But yeah, if you hold the charge attack with this weapon, you'll actually be able to block, which is kind of interesting. Something that sort of sets it apart from other weapons. Now, I will say that I think maybe the second and third light attack on this weapon are maybe a bit awkward, a bit kind of too slow, too clunky, weird. I don't know. It doesn't feel quite right. But The charge attacks, the heavy attacks, they more than make up for it on this weapon, as they can do big damage. They can stagger nearly anything. They can stagger a Chaos Warrior. They can stagger a Hook Rat. So if you're about to get grabbed, just do that heavy attack, come down on that Hook Rat's head, and if you don't kill him, you'll be able to stagger him and kind of get a couple steps between you and his big long hook, which I think is cool. And that takes us to our final weapon in S tier, the Executioner Sword. This one, even though it got nerfed, even though it lost a little bit of attack speed, this weapon still does insane, monstrous amounts of damage, and I can't put it anywhere else but S tier on Grail Knight because it just does so much freaking damage. Grail Knight already has a passive ability where he does 25% more damage to each enemy, on the first hit. Combine that with the talent where all his heavy attacks get automatically 25% more power all the time. Rear back with this thing and one shot a Chaos Warrior. Yes, please. Yes, I will. Grail Knight is an absolute elite killing machine with the Executioner Sword. You're definitely going to want to run Swift Slaying on it because it's really slow on the light attacks, but hey, you're going to be able to one-shot most elites pretty much all the time. The X Sword is so freaking powerful. I literally can't. I would be a fool to put it anywhere else but S tier. I would just be a fool. It belongs there. It's at the top. It just does so much damage, and Grail Knight allows for it to do even more. It's a really good weapon that works really well with Grail Knight. So that's it, guys. That's my list. In S tier, I have Executioner Sword and Bretonnian Longsword. A tier, I have the Great Hammer and the Mace. B tier, I have the Mace and Sword. I have the Sword and Shield, the Bretonnian Longsword, or the Bretonnian Sword and Shield, rather. C tier, I have the Great Sword, the Mace and Shield, and down in D tier, I have the Lonely Old Sword by itself. If you liked this video, let me know. If you hated it, I guess also let me know. What would you change? What do you guys think of this list? I'd love to hear about it. And feel free to join my Discord if you want. Link will be in the description down below. Take it easy, guys.